What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Katana melee weapon, as well as all of the other melee weapons. It's going to be a full comparison to see how the Katana stacks up against the rest. Now, just in case you were curious, the Katana is the final reward for the Navigator event that's currently going on. And in the description at least, it stated that this is a high damage, moderate range, and moderate attack speed melee weapon. So let's dive into that, starting it off with our standard attacks, or non-charged or alternate attack as they call it. We will be covering that afterward. But with a standard attack, just like with all of the melee weapons we currently have, this deals 135 damage, meaning it is a one-hit kill melee weapon. Next, a very important stat to look at with melee weapons is the amount of time it takes to hit from the moment we activate the attack to the moment we actually get a hit on the target. The Katana is actually a little on the slower side. It is the slowest in the melee category outside of the gun butt, but I don't really include that there. I just kind of put it there as a baseline to work from. But as far as actual melee weapons go, this is the slowest when it comes to the amount of time it takes to hit. And also another stat that's important in some situations at least is how long does it take to get a second hit off? If you have two enemies side by side, for instance, or maybe you missed the first attack and you need to swing again, how long is that going to take? And it turns out we're just slightly worse than average here at 750 milliseconds. Now after that, arguably the most important stat when it comes to a melee weapon is our range potential. How far away from our target do we have to be in order for a hit to register? And keep in mind with this, the values that are stated in menu, they don't align with what you actually see with testing if you ping the enemy player. This is likely just due to how the player capsules work, so I will be showing both values. However, I like to rely more so on my tested values, because that's what you'll actually be able to ping and see in game. And when it comes to the Katana, it is the second best in the melee category. It's just behind the Hell Saw, which has an extra 10 centimeters of reach to it, which really isn't that much. So we do have a pretty solid lunge range here at 2 meters. And then finally, all of the melee weapons are the same when it comes to our maximum hit angle at 30 degrees for our standard melee attack. That means if you're within the range that you can hit them, you can be aiming up to 30 degrees off target and it will still lock on and get that kill. So overall, so far, just looking at our standard attack here, yeah, the description for the Katana is accurate. It is a little bit on the slower side when it comes to like your time to hit, for instance, but we make up for that with a little bit of added range compared to most of the other melee weapons. Now, what about our charged melee attack or alternate melee attack? This is the one where if you hold the aim down sight button, you will perform an animation that's sort of charging up your melee weapon. And then when you release that, if you're within the range of your target, then it will activate like a mini finishing move animation in first person where both you and the enemy player are locked into that animation. So they can't fight back in that moment, but you also can't do anything except wait for the animation to complete. So that does leave you vulnerable to their teammates. They could shoot you in this process. And when it comes to this attack, keep in mind the ballistic knife was eliminated since it doesn't have this charge attack, and instead you can shoot the ballistic knife. But the first stat to look at here is our charge time. How long does that charging animation take to get ready before you can activate the actual killing animation? And it turns out we're basically bang on average here with the Katana at 250 milliseconds for that. Then after that, when you release that and initiate the attack, how long does it take to actually register the kill? Well, in the case of the Katana, this is 750 milliseconds, which again is pretty close to average for these melee weapons. And this results in an overall time to kill if we're activating this in a reactionary way, at least, if we decide to go with this alt attack. It leaves us with a total time to kill of 1 second, which is quite good. It's a little bit slower than the knife, but it's faster than the Hell Saw and the Flatline. And to top that off, we've got the same range as the Hell Saw and Flatline. Again, these are the values I actually tested in-game. And while the menus state that these values are different for all of these, it's just not the case. It's 2 meters for all of them. And when it comes to our maximum hit angle, this is increased quite a bit when using this alt attack at 55 degrees. So you can be a lot more sloppy with your aim as long as you're within the appropriate range to get that hit on your target. And so when it comes to the charge attack, out of all of the melee weapons, it's actually pretty decent on the Katana. However, with the pace of the game and the movement and everything, I just find these charge attacks to often be a waste of time and more risk than it's really worth, and I'd rather just go with the standard attack. In either case, this just leaves us with one last set of important stats here when it comes to melee weapons, and this is our movement speed stats. And as we can see here, the Katana is not terrible in this department, but it is beat out by both the Flatline as well as the regular combat knife, and that goes for our base walk speed as well as our sprint speed. So I would say it's not bad in this area, but it's also not great. It's not really a standout. It's pretty much just average in the movement speed department for a melee weapon. And with that covered, that's pretty much it. Melee weapons are pretty basic in this game, and when it comes to my thoughts on the Katana, While it's certainly not a bad melee weapon, if you want that little bit of extra range, I actually kind of prefer it over the Hell Saw, just due to the fact that we've got better mobility stats, so I can close those distances more effectively, and I find that to be more helpful than a very slightly longer range that the Hell Saw has. But honestly, I don't really melee all that often in this game, and if I really wanted to, I think I would just stick with the standard knife so I can really maximize that mobility stat, since I just find that closing that distance is so important, especially with how fast this game tends to move. So at the end of the day, I don't really see myself putting this on any of my loadouts. Again, it's not like I pull out my knife very often, but if I do, I'm gonna want an actual combat knife in my hands. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this melee weapon in those comments down below, and I'm curious to know which melee weapon is your current favorite to use. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.